African time. Kindly ask for your patience as we allow a few more participants to join the session. We'll reserve dedicated time at the end of the presentations to respond to any questions you input in the Q&A section. So please refrain from raising hands and put your questions in the Q&A section. We also have interpretation services in both French and Arabic. So please make sure you make use of the interpretation tools that we've provided. And one more thing, our timings today are a bit flexible. So if we run over or under in certain places, please bear with us. So without further delay, let's get started. To kick things off properly, I'd like to hand over to my colleague, Ms. Carol Gilombo, our Senior Communications Officer, who will share a bit more about why we're all here today and what you can expect to walk away with. Ms. Gilombo, over to you.
Thank you very much, Fatu. Good afternoon, good morning to everyone joining us, distinguished representatives of the African Diaspora Civil Society organizations joining us from across the world. Welcome, and thank you for taking time to join this webinar. On behalf of the African Union Economic, Social, and Cultural Council, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this webinar on the application process for ECOSOCC's 5th Permanent General Assembly. Today's engagement reflects the African Union's enduring commitment to recognizing the African diaspora as an integral part of Africa's development and integration journey. No matter where you live across the world, your expertise, experiences, networks, and contributions remain vital to the realization of the Africa that we want. We are therefore especially pleased to invite African Diaspora CSOs to take their place in Africa's continental governance architecture through participation in ECOSOCC's 5th Permanent General Assembly. This election cycle is particularly significant because it provides dedicated seats for African diaspora organizations across the Americas, Europe, Asia, Oceania, and other regions of the world. Through these seats, the voice of the diaspora will be further institutionalized within the African Union, strengthening collaboration between the continent and its global community. By joining the 5th Permanent General Assembly, your organizations will have the opportunity to connect with continental peers and African Union institutions and contributing to shaping AU policies and programs and collaborating in advancing the African Union's Agenda 2063. Today's webinar has been organized to ensure that all interested and eligible organizations have the practical knowledge required to successfully navigate the application process through the ECOSOCC Connect platform, which you'll be told more about in the coming sessions. Today's objectives of the webinar include to introduce you, the participants, to the ECOSOCC Connect platform and its role within the ECOSOCC Harmonized Accreditation Mechanism, to provide a step-by-step walkthrough of the registration and application process into the 5th Permanent General Assembly, to clarify eligibility criteria, application requirements, and supporting documentation for diaspora organizations, to address any common questions and challenges that you may have or encounter, and of course, to encourage broad, diverse, and inclusive participation from African diaspora civil society organizations worldwide. Consequently, we expect at the end of this webinar that you should be able to understand ECOSOCC's mandate and the role of the Permanent General Assembly, to appreciate the significance of your representation within the African Union framework, to be able to navigate the ECOSOCC Connect platform confidently, to complete the registration and application process accurately, and to submit a strong and compliant application before the application deadline. I would like to therefore remind all participants that applications for the 5th Permanent General Assembly are currently open and will close on July 15th, 2026. We therefore encourage all eligible organizations to submit their applications early and take advantage of the support provided through these engagement sessions. Before I hand over on to the next, to my colleague, today's agenda which is being projected on the screen. We'll begin with an introduction to the ECOSOCC Connect platform, including a demonstration of how organizations can register and manage their profiles. This will be followed by a session on ECOSOCC's mandate, governance structure, and the application process for the 5th Permanent General Assembly, with particular attention to the newly established Diaspora CSOs, eligibility criteria, and supporting documentation. We will then have a dedicated substantial time for questions and answers to ensure that you leave here with clarity and confidence regarding your application process. As we gather virtually from different parts of the world, we are united by a common purpose: advancing Africa's development and ensuring that the voices of Africans everywhere contribute to sharing our shared future. Thank you for your commitment to Africa and for joining us today. I wish us all a productive and engaging session. Thank you very much for joining us, and let's engage and come out with the expected outcomes. Thank you so much. Over to you, Fatu.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jalombo. That's a great way to frame what's ahead. Let's start with our first session. Before we watch the video demo, we want to show you on how to get started on the ECOSOCC Connect platform. I just want to take a few minutes to share a little bit of context, because honestly, this platform represents a really exciting milestone for us here at ECOSOCC and for civil society engagement across the continent. And I think it helps to understand the why before we show you the how. So as many of you already know, ECOSOCC is the civil society advisory organ of the African Union. Our job in a nutshell is to make sure that the voices, the expertise, and the lived experiences of citizens and civil society organizations actually find their way into the policies and decisions coming out of the AU. So over the last couple of years, ECOSOCC has been going through some pretty significant reforms aimed at strengthening how we work with civil society. One of the big milestones here was the endorsement of the Harmonized Accreditation Mechanism, or HAM for short. That was followed by the adoption of the revised ECOSOCC statutes earlier this year. So what makes the HAM so important is that it creates one important harmonized pathway through which civil society organizations can obtain consultative or observer status with the AU. It's meant to basically make engagement with the AU more structured and more accessible. But we needed an actual tool to bring it to life, something that could help organizations across Africa and the diaspora to apply for recognition, to communicate with us, and to stay engaged along the way. And that's how ECOSOCC Connect came to be. And we want to emphasize that the ECOSOCC Connect platform is not just a registration portal. It's actually not a registration portal. It's the digital gateway for organizations seeking formal standing with the AU. And it's going to be the foundation for a lot of our engagement processes moving forward. So through the platform, organizations can create and manage their profiles, submit applications, update their information whenever needed, and they can also tap into different ECOSOCC opportunities, all from one central place. And moving to a digital platform like this helps us move away from manual processes that slow things down. And it also brings a lot more transparency to the process, because you can actually track and manage your own submissions. It also expands access. So organizations from anywhere across Africa and the diaspora can engage with us no matter where they're based. At the end of the day, the platform is really about helping us build a more modern, more responsive, and more inclusive system for civil society participation in AU affairs. Now, a lot of you are probably familiar with the platform through the ongoing call for applications for the 5th PGA, which was launched on 15th of May. This is actually the first time the whole process is being run through ECOSOCC Connect. And as mentioned earlier, it's part of our bigger move towards a fully digital way of engaging. If you've already started the process, you'll notice it begins with creating your personal profile and then moving on to the organizational profile. Once your organizational profile is reviewed and approved, you're then able to move forward with applications for the 5th PGA. And if you haven't registered, we've put together a short video demo for you that will walk you through completing your profile, getting you acquainted with the platform. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at the demonstration.
Welcome to ECOSOCC Connect, your gateway to engaging with ECOSOCC. This platform enables civil society organizations to register, manage profiles, explore opportunities, and participate in ECOSOCC's activities and initiatives. In this tutorial, I'll guide you step by step through creating your account, completing your profile, navigating the platform, and submitting your Permanent General Assembly application. By the end of this, you'll be ready to use ECOSOCC Connect confidently and make the most of everything the platform has to offer. Let's get you started on ECOSOCC Connect. First things first, open your preferred browser and head over to the ECOSOCC Connect homepage. Once you land on the homepage, you're ready to begin creating your profile. Here's a helpful tip before you go further. You can easily switch to your preferred language right from the homepage. Just click on the language icon in the top right corner and select the language that makes navigation most comfortable for you. Now to get started, click on Create Profile. This will take you to the registration page where you'll be asked to enter your email address and set up a secure password. Before you proceed, take a moment to go through the terms of service. It's always good practice to understand the guidelines before completing your user profile. Once you've entered your email address and chosen a secure password, a verification link will be sent straight to your inbox. Simply open your email, click the verification link, and confirm your email address. This step helps secure your account and ensure everything is properly set up. Once that's complete, you're officially ready to move forward and start your ECOSOCC journey. Before getting started, let's set up your profile so we can personalize your experience on the platform. In the first step, you'll be asked to provide a few personal details, including your title, full name, and job title. Once completed, click Continue to move to the next step. Next, you'll enter your contact, location information, fill in your nationality, phone number, and preferred time zone. After completing all the required fields, click the Complete Setup button, and that's it. Your profile setup is complete, and you'll be taken directly to your dashboard where you can begin exploring the platform. Welcome to your dashboard, your all-in-one hub for managing everything on the platform. On the left-hand navigation panel, you can quickly navigate the main sections of the platform and move seamlessly between your tools and applications. Let's start with Workspace. This is your home base where everything comes together. Here, you can navigate your dashboard for a quick snapshot of updates, your statuses, and anything that needs your attention. Within My Organization, this is where you manage and view your organization's profile. And from your inbox, you can access all official messages and notifications in one place. Under Activities, this is where the action happens. your active workspace for completing tasks, accreditation, and application forms. Everything you need to keep things moving forward is right here. Under Accounts, this is all about you and your support tools. Under Help, this is your go-to space for guides, tips, and support whenever you need a hand. And navigate to your profile to update your personal information at any time. Be sure to keep an eye on the notification icon in the top right corner for important updates on your application deadlines, approval notifications, and also platform updates and reminders. You can also manage your account settings and update your profile anytime through the user menu located in the top right corner of the platform. At the top of your page of your dashboard, you see a personalized welcome message along with a progress tracker that helps guide you. In the Getting Started section, you can easily track your progress. Completed steps will be marked with a green check, while upcoming steps remain available for you to complete. As you complete each step, your progress will automatically update, helping you stay on track throughout. Now, take a few moments to explore the layout and get comfortable with where everything is located.
All right, thank you all for your attention during the demo. I hope it's given you a clearer picture of how registration on the platform works and how you can make the most of the platform. Now let's move on to our next session, which looks at how what the application process actually looks like for the 5th PGA and looks into ECOSOCC. Okay, we have one more video correction on how to do corrections on the platform, and that's going to be played now. So let's look at that before we move on to the next section.
To keep your registration process moving smoothly, make sure you regularly check your emails for important notifications and updates on any task assigned to your organization. From your email, simply click Review Corrections to be taken directly to your account login page. Once you're logged in, it will take you to My Organization under Workspace. However, you can easily track everything from your dashboard. Whenever a correction request is issued, a notification banner will appear right on your dashboard. Just click Open Task on that banner to view the request. After opening the correction request, you'll be taken to a summary page showing exactly what needs to be updated. Take a moment to carefully review the reviewer's notes, make the necessary corrections, and resubmit your registration. You can also add any supporting comments for the reviewers when submitting your updates. Once submitted, you'll see a summary of all submitted information, followed by a confirmation tab indicating task completion. After that, the process is complete and you can return to your dashboard. Just a quick tip. There are a few simple ways to access your correction request at any time. In addition to the dashboard banner, you can also use the left side menu by going to Activities and then selecting Tasks to review any tasks assigned. You can also click the notification icon at the top right corner of the platform to view all recent updates and notifications. And that's it. You're now all set to navigate correction requests with ease. Just remember to check your emails regularly so you never miss an update. If you need support at any point, refer back to these steps and follow the prompts on your dashboard.
All right, so we'll be posting these videos to our YouTube channel if you want to refer to them later on as you're going through your application. All right, I'm really excited to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Bekele, our Senior Legal Officer, who's going to take us into the heart of today's discussions. Mr. Bekele will break down what ECOSOCC actually is, how it's structured, and why the General Assembly is so important, including some exciting news about the newly created Diaspora seats. He'll also walk you through exactly what you need to apply, the eligibility requirements, the documents you'll need, and some really useful tips. We'd like to remind you before we proceed that this conversation is not a negotiation on criteria or eligibility requirements. Our senior legal officer is here to clarify criteria and eligibility as they appear in our statutes. Over to you, Mr. Bekele.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Madam Darbo. Again, let me welcome you all to this webinar, and honestly, it gives me a lot of excitement and encouragement, at least finally, to make a presentation, to have a webinar specifically to allow our diaspora constituency to finally join the ECOSOCC General Assembly. ECOSOCC has been in existence for the last 20 plus years, and the diaspora constituency is supposed to be part of this family, but for the longest time, due to the absence of the legal framework governing participation of our diaspora constituency, we could not have them in our General Assembly. But now, following the decision by our heads of state, approving the diaspora legal framework governing the participation of African diaspora based outside of the continent to join the ECOSOCC family. Now the time is ready for us to have you. So far, we've been receiving so many applications from all parts of the world, from the South America, North America, Europe, Asia. We've been receiving a bunch of applications, but we felt that there should be a need for a webinar to sensitize new applicants, perhaps for them to have a better understanding of the eligibility criteria, the process of application itself. And we believe that this segment will give you a very good opportunity for you to have clarity around the application process, as well as the kind of organ or organization you are about to join if you are elected into ECOSOCC General Assembly. What is ECOSOCC? I believe this question should be answered looking at the mother document of the African Union, which is the Constitutive Act of the African Union that basically established the African Union. And Article 4 of that act, subparagraph C, talks about the core principles governing the union. One of that core principle is that participation of African people in the activities of the union. And that is an important principle that guides the operation of the African Union, right? And ECOSOCC plays that core responsibility. We are the CSO organ of the African Union, established in accordance with the Constitutive Act of the African Union, and our mandate is primarily of advisory nature. We serve as an advisory body of the African Union, and in our capacity to advise, the whole rationale of ECOSOCC is to represent the voice of African citizens, whether you are in the continent or outside of the continent. We want to amplify your voice in the programs and policies of the union. And of course, as I mentioned, for the diaspora family, you have been missing that opportunity for the last 2 decades, but now time has come. It's not too late now. At least we are here to have your voice formally represented in our policy processes. And looking at the composition of now ECOSOCC, especially referring to the ECOSOCC General Assembly, in total we have 209 seats for the General Assembly. Out of that, 20 seats are allocated to African diaspora. And as my colleague said, we are here to present the legal framework governing ECOSOCC as well as governing the diaspora participation. And we are not here really to negotiate those criteria and those rules. Our role is to provide clarity and then to sensitize you with those criteria and then legal frameworks. So there is no room for negotiation. Our role is to implement those legal frameworks approved by the African Union policy body. And in that, the current configuration of the GA in its current state of play, we have 20 CSOs allocated to the African diaspora. And the diaspora legal frameworks further, divide that 20 seat into various continents of the world for Americas, Europe, Asia, Oceania, and so on and so forth. And I'll come to it later on. So I mentioned that our mandate is primarily to provide input into AU policies and programs that can play in the form of generating an advisory opinion generated by our members, that is you, if you are elected into our GA, is preparing a report on various issues affecting the continent. We issue report around governance, around migration, economic integration, and so on and so forth. And our report is basically representing the voice of the citizen in those conversations. When our head of states meet at the assembly level, when our ministers, thematic ministers meet at the STC level, these are specialized committees comprised of ministers on various thematic areas. We bring in those advisory opinions, we bring in those reports and those advocacy into those policy and program discussions. And that's why we feel that ECOSOCC plays an important role in making Africa Union a people-led and a people-centered union. Now coming to our governance structure, our governance structure starts with the General Assembly. That is our highest decision-making body of ECOSOCC. They give us highest level of political directions and strategic orientations, and you get to join that assembly. And then we have also what we call it our standing committee. The standing committee is comprised of members of the GA, General Assembly, who are elected into the standing committee. The role is more like a governing board of ECOSOCC, right? So we have also standing committee, and then we have sectoral cluster committees. These are 14 in number, and each and every General Assembly member will have a chance to be a member of 2 committees based on their areas of expertise and their areas of specialization. And these cluster committees, their primary purpose is to generate advisory opinion. As I mentioned to you, there are 14 in numbers. These are 14 thematic areas. For example, we have a sectoral cluster committee on finance, monetary affairs, economic planning and integration. We have a cluster committee around youth, culture and sport, around trade, industry and minerals, education, science and technology, on defense, safety and security. These are our sectoral cluster committees, and you generate advisory opinion around those thematic areas. And for you to join those committees, definitely you need to show that you have programs and policies you have been implementing around those areas. So it's a merit-based membership. If you are working around youth and culture, then you cannot join, for example, migration and refugee. You have to show that you have the expertise and the qualification to be a member of that committee. And when you apply for our General Assembly application, you get to choose 3 thematic areas. That is in the order of your preference and then your expertise. Once you get to join our family in the General Assembly, and then you'll be given an opportunity to pick 2 committees. You can join and then participate in the advisory opinion generation, in the advisory opinion development process. So it's a very important also structure of ECOSOCC, and we call them sectoral cluster committees. And then we have, of course, secretariat. This is basically our role is myself and then the whole team led by Head of Secretariat, Ambassador William Keru. And then we have Head of Programs and then various supporting officers. And our role is to support all other structure of ECOSOCC, starting from General Assembly, standing committees, sectoral cluster committees, and so on and so forth. Another structure we have is, we call it credentials committees. This is a committee comprised of former General Assembly members. And their responsibility and mandate is to evaluate and assess credentials of ECOSOCC members as well as applicants. Even currently, your application will be appraised by the credential committee. And that is also, their role is even after you join ECOSOCC, they will continuously evaluate your credentials to make sure that you fulfill the requirement that is provided in the statute of ECOSOCC. And then we have a disciplinary committee in charge of ensuring discipline, and then for that committee is in charge of ensuring discipline, and each member of General Assembly complies with the highest level of professionalism, and then complies with our code of conduct and ethics. And finally, we have ECOSOCC chapters. These are national chapters at the level of our 55 member states. Going forward, also we'll be having a diaspora chapter as well. We are discussing the modalities of operationalizing that chapter, but for now, we only have national chapters at the national level. These are within African continent. So far, we have operationalized close to 10 national chapters. We hope to roll out across 55 member states. In a nutshell, that is the structure of ECOSOCC. Now, looking at the function of the General Assembly, as I mentioned to you, the General Assembly is the highest decision-making body of ECOSOCC. The first responsibility of the General Assembly is to provide political leadership and strategic guidance and oversight on ECOSOCC activities and operation. Number 2 is they elect members of the ECOSOCC Bureau. They elect chair of each cluster committees, credential committees, and disciplinary committees, as well as they oversee the work of those committees. These are some of the function of the General Assembly. Now coming to perhaps with that, maybe let me stop my presentation around the mandate governance structure and function of the GA. Now, let me walk you through the application process for the 5th General Assembly. And I'm very sure you've seen our call for application. I'm very sure you have seen our website. Before you are allowed to apply for the 5th GA, you are required to complete your registration, and then the accreditation officer will have to approve your registration. And if you have submitted a successful registration, and then the officer will approve your registration, and then you'll be allowed now to go and apply for the GA. And so for those of you who have not completed your registration, please do so. We have a very good team that interact with you. In case you have submitted a wrong, for example, certificate of registration, I think you'll be given a chance to correct that information. And once the officer is satisfied with your registration, then it will approve, he will approve or she will approve your registration, and then you'll be allowed to now apply for the 5th GA. In terms of eligibility criteria for the 5th GA, I'm now speaking to the criteria for the diaspora constituency. Yesterday, we had a very good meeting with African-based CSOs, and now we're talking about eligibility criteria for those CSOs who are based outside of the continent. To start with, the diaspora legal framework has provided distribution of the 20 seats among 5 regions. Americas will take 10 seats in total. When we say Americas, we are referring to North America, Central America, the Caribbean, and all the way to South and Latin America. And then we have Europe will take 5 seats, Asia 2 seats, Oceania 2 seats, and other regions 1 seat, in total 20 seats. And questions have come in our previous interaction whether we should, for example, subdivide the Americas and then allocate seating for example, the Caribbeans, the North America, South America. The diaspora legal framework doesn't give that leeway. And our role is to implement the legal framework as it is. Of course, going forward, based on the experience we will generate in this election process, we will submit a feedback to our policy organs. But in its current state of play, the Americas will have 10 seats, and those who have met the eligibility criteria and cleared by the credential committee will go through an election, right? And that is how we're going to implement for this election. But going forward, based on the feedback we receive in this cycle of election and application process, we can advise our policy principles. But in its current criteria, America as a whole will have 10 seats, Europe will have 5 seats, Asia 2 seats, Oceania 2 seats, and other regions who are not mentioned under those 4 regions will have 1 seat, in total 20 seats. And then if you are elected, you will have a mandate of 4 years, renewable once. Now, coming to the eligibility criteria. The first criteria is that you should be an organization. That means an individual cannot apply for ECOSOCC General Assembly. It's a CSO-based membership. It's a duly registered organization that applies for ECOSOCC General Assembly. And when you look at our statute, it has categorized 4 groupings. The first one is, we call them social groups. These are CSOs representing women, children, youth, elderly, and people with disability, both in Africa and then in the diaspora. Similarly, you have professional groups such as Association of Artists, Engineers, Health Practitioners, Social Workers, Media, Teachers, Sport Associations, Legal Professionals, social scientists, academia, business organizations, national chambers of commerce, workers, employers, industry, and agriculture, as well as other private sector interest groups. And then we have number 3, NGOs and community-based organizations. And finally, cultural organization and interfaith groups. So any CSOs within this grouping who are based in Africa or outside of Africa as a diaspora African CSO are eligible to apply for the Permanent General Assembly of ECOSOCC. And so you will have to be an African diaspora CSO for you to apply for the General Assembly. And from the application we've seen so far, we've seen individual applying for the GA or getting registration. And we have to reject the registration because you will have to have a certificate of registration for you to be considered as an organization. That's why the second criteria is the requirement of is registration and status. That is to mean that you have to provide proof of valid registration as an African diaspora CSO, registered somewhere in the world, and then you have to have at least a lifespan of 3 years. That means an organization that has been registered on or before 2023 May is eligible to apply. Any organization who is younger than 3 years are not eligible to apply. So you have to have a registration that is older than 3 years and above. Also, you have to show that during this period, you have proof of continuous operation. And for you to show that, you'll have to show us your reports, projects you have implemented in the course of your 3 years period. Any organization that is younger than 3 years is not eligible to apply for the current cycle of GA. And another important requirement for the diaspora is that you will have to submit the most recent annual audit statements conducted by an independent auditing company or a licensed individual for that matter. And your audit report should also include information on funding sources. And that report should be issued no later than 2 years prior to your application. So the issue of audit statement is a disqualifying criteria. If you have not attached your audit statement, we cannot consider you for election. So you will have to have an audit statement done by an independent auditing company or a licensed auditor that is submitted no later than 2 years prior to your application. The third requirement is you have to provide proof that your ownership and management of that organization consists of not less than 50% of Africans or of African diaspora individuals, right? That's also another criteria you should keep in mind. The next criteria is it has to do with a financial statement. You have to provide proof that substantially or at least 50% of your basic resources are derived from contribution at the national level or from African institutions. This requirement is very clear. If you are based in America, your resource should be based in that country, and your funders should be those national stakeholders. Their objectives, their values should align with the values, priorities, and objectives of the African Union. If you have received funding from organizations, even at the national level, that contradicts our values at the African Union level, it will be disqualified. When we say African institutions for African diaspora, we are referring to those institutions that African countries are member. For example, United Nations is a good example, right? And similar other international organizations where African countries are member, you are eligible to take, and your basic resource, at least 50% should come from that local sources. And so far, I think for the diaspora application, they have been fulfilling this requirement to a larger extent. The challenge we've been having is that sometimes they upload a financial statement with inadequate information. That means as an evaluator, when we open that report, we cannot make a determination as to your 50% basic resources. Maybe also it's good that we define what constitutes basic resources. These are basically your operating costs. You have program budget, and then you have operating cost. So we are referring to your operating cost. And 50% of your operating cost should come from national sources and from African institutions. And the financial report you're attaching should be clear enough for us to make that determination. And another core criteria is that if you have received any voluntary contribution, their amount and the source should be faithfully revealed. And that's also another mandatory requirement you should keep in mind. Apart from these core criteria, we also have additional criteria. Number one, your objectives and principles as a CSO should be consistent with the principles, values, and objectives of the Africa Union, as set out in Article 3 and 4 of our Constitutive Act. You know the AU website, you can easily access our act. I'm very sure you have a better idea of our principles and objectives. So if your objectives and principles and values don't align with the AU, that is also another cause for disqualification. You will have to meet this criteria as well. The last criteria under additional requirement is you have to demonstrate proficiency in thematic areas relevant to ECOSOCC mandate. And you have to show that you've been implementing programs and projects within those thematic areas. As I mentioned to you earlier on, we have 14 thematic areas. At least you have to show that you are proficient with 2 thematic areas. And those thematic qualification should have at least in the last 2 years, right? In the last 2 years, you've been implementing programs and projects around those thematic areas. And it's important that you attach proof speaking to that as well. So in a nutshell, those are the main requirements that you should keep in mind when applying for the 5th GA. Now with that, I think I will make you walk through the whole application process. I will invite my colleague to now project the page where we go through the whole thing from scratch, the platform. Yes. Thank you so much. So, as I mentioned to you earlier on, once you have successfully registered in our platform, you will receive a link that takes you to this page, right, to apply for the 5th ECOSOCC Permanent General Assembly. So let us now go through each step by step. Let's proceed. So the first step is your organization profile, basically. That is the first thing you should fill. Basically, this section requires you to fill those information that is peculiar to organization, such as the name of your organization. If you have an acronym, you should just put that one as well. The language you used to submit your application. In Africa Union, we have 6 languages, 6 working languages. These are Arabic, English, French, Kiswahili, Portuguese, and Spanish. You can use one of these languages to submit your application. Also, you have to tell us that if you are conversant with additional language of the union, right? That also should be mentioned in your application as well. Year of establishment, this will make us determine whether you are 3 years old or above that, because an organization that is 3 years and younger cannot compete for this process. So you'll have to show that you have at least 3 years of existence within certain jurisdiction. Let's proceed. You'll have to give us, these are basic information, your postal address, office telephone number, email address. If you have social media handles, of course, also give us those information. It will help us, determine your application as well. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and so on and so forth. Similarly, if you have website, it's an optional. If you can give us, the better for us. It will enhance your application as well. And then we have a section on location classification. This is now where you'll have to make a determination. If you are applying as an African Diaspora CSO, and then you click under African Diaspora CSO. If you are an African-based CSO, of course, you go for African-based CSOs. But in this case, most of you are African Diaspora CSO. You will have to select that. And then you will have to select a country where you are working in. That is outside of the continent. Please select African Diaspora. Yes. So in here, we have the whole world, like countries listed under here. You just pick one country where you have a lawful registration. And you have to attach certificate of registration of that country. If you are based, for example, say in Moldova, and then you will have to attach a document that shows that you are lawfully registered in Moldova. If you are registered in Malta or Netherlands, and so on and so forth, we need to have a proof that you have a lawful registration in that country. Let's proceed. Next. And this one is also straightforward, mission and governance. All in all, based on our initial review, most applications are very good in terms of providing their vision and mission, goals and objectives, as well as the programmatic priorities aligned with our Agenda 2063. I'm very sure most of you know about Agenda 2063. This one is a continental development blueprint of the Union, the kind of Africa we want to see in the next 50 years. The document was launched in 2013, and currently we are implementing the second 10-year implementation plan of the agenda. You have access to this agenda. It's a public document. Make sure that your programs are aligned with the Agenda 2063 priorities and aspirations, basically. Let's proceed. Governance and ownership, right? You have to answer yes or no, and the answer should always be yes for this one. If you answer no, that means it's automatic disqualification. So African ownership and management of threshold, in this case, at least 50% of your ownership and management must be African. When we say African, it's someone of African nationality and citizenship, a Ghanaian, a Nigerian, South African, Tunisian, Egypt, and so on and so forth, or of African diaspora, right? This is someone who is of an African descent living outside of the continent. It could be America, Canada, Spain, you name it. So 50% of your management or board should made up of African people or African diaspora people. I have explained about African basic resource threshold. I'm very sure you have to answer yes. If not, then it will disqualify you. But if you said yes, you will have to attach a proof showing that 50% of your basic operating cost come from a national source. Now let's go to category of the organization. In this case, you have to pick which one applies to you. A social group, a professional group, an NGO, community-based organization, volunteer organization, cultural organization, or if other, also you have to specify, but these are the list we have. You should choose one. If you have any affiliate organization, again, please tell us. We want to know the names and the details of those affiliate organizations. If you don't have, simply say no, and that's also okay. Does your organization charge membership fee? If yes, please tell us the details. If no, simply say no or not applicable. If you said yes, you'll have to give us the fees amount and number of paying members of your organization as well. We want to know how many they are. And for everything that you said yes, again, you will have to give us an information and evidence proving that factual statement. The next page is on representation. Of course, you have a CSO, but then you are represented by individuals, and we call them designated reps. And you are required to give us a primary designate and then an alternate. And in here, we want to know the full name, date of birth, gender, occupation, nationality, country of residence. For diaspora organization, country of residence is not relevant. Whether he is in Africa or outside, it doesn't matter. You are based in US, but your designated rep can reside in Africa. It's not a problem for us, but it has to be someone who is an African or an African diaspora individual. You have to give us your academic qualification, professional qualification, your professional summary. If you are a member into any societies, tell us. Basically, this one is a digital CV of your designated rep and alternate, right? You have to fill it properly. And one tip in here, if you have selected a thematic area, for example, assume that you have an expertise around, say, finance and monetary integration, right? The person you are designating should also have similar qualification, because that individual represents you in ECOSOCC, and he will participate in meetings, workshops, and advisory opinion development. So he should have, or she should have, the expertise and the qualification to provide input that is, of the right, like quality. If you are speaking about migration, you should be someone who has the academic qualification and the experience around migration. Let's proceed. And that will really help your application as well. If you have received an application, a CSO working around, say, migration, but the individual you have designated is an accountant, that will be a very weak application. So make sure to have someone from your organization that has the qualification you are choosing to apply for. Again, email address, phone number, these are straightforward. The same requirement we apply for the alternate as well. Let's move on. Yes, next. This is now where I would really want you to think very hard. when it comes to, please go back. You've jumped one section. The thematic focus. As I explained to you, when a CSO join ECOSOC, the whole purpose is that you have to provide input into AU policies and programs. That input can be into an advisory opinion, or you are invited to attend an AU meeting somewhere in Africa by an AU organ. It could be a Human Rights Commission in Banjul. It could be an APRM, peer review governance mechanism that we have in South Africa. It could be AUDA NEPAD, our development agency in South Africa. Anywhere where we have an organ, you will be invited to provide your input into those policy and program conversation. So you need to have the expertise and the qualification to provide an informed opinion, an informed input. And there should be a match, again, I want to reiterate, between your organization thematic expertise as well as the individual you are designating to represent you. If there is a mismatch, as I mentioned, it will be a weak application. And you have to provide a report in the form of a program you have implemented in the past, your annual report, project that you have implemented in the past that shows that you have the expertise and the qualification to implement those programs. By doing so, we know that you have that requisite qualification and experience to provide input around finance, youth, or trade, whatever you picked from the 14 thematic areas. Next. Another important also qualification is funding details. We want to know every funding that you received in the last 2 fiscal years. That is 2024, 2025. And you'll have to tell us your reporting currency. If you are in US, that currency is USD. If you are in EU zone, it should be Euro. If you are in UK, in pound, and so on and so forth. We have all the currencies. Pick the one that applies to you. After that, you will have to now tell us if you are applying membership fees. Tell us yes. If yes, we want to know the amount. We want to know the currencies used, the reporting year, and so on and so forth. Let's proceed. If you have received funding, any form of contribution from other members, again, we want to know if it applies to you. If it doesn't, just click not applicable. If you have received funding from governments, for example, you are based in US, if you have received a government from US government or any other government, we want to know, and you have to report it faithfully. For every organization that it has applied, we do a comprehensive background check to determine whether you have received funding in the last 2 fiscal years of your organization. Similarly, if you have received funding from international organizations such as UN, and other EU, AU, and so on and so forth, we want to know, please tell us. The same requirement for private sector, funding from other NGOs. Again, if you said yes, we want to know. And lastly, if you have done any income generated contracts, it could be a grant with a funding partner. It could be a consultancy. We want to know all that. And you should, again, submit right information, because when we do our background check, we want to reconcile your response here and then the outcome of our background check. And then I think the same requirement here as well. In terms of expenditure, what are your program expenditure? We want to know. And what are your operating expenditure? We want to know this information because it will help us determine whether your basic resource, at least 50%, come from a local source. And that one is a very important criteria to determine the viability of your application. Next, please. This is now the final requirement. For everything you have said, before this. Now you will have to attach supporting document proving that. Every document you have attached should be certified and should be valid and accurate. For example, the first supporting document you are going to attach is your proof of operation in member state or in a diaspora region. If you are based in UK, we want to know that you've been operating for the last 2 years prior to your application in that country and show us a proof to that effect. This has 2 requirements. 1, you have been registered for the last 3 years. And number 2, you have been operating and you have been active in that country for the last 2 years preceding your application. You have to attach your constitution, charter, statute, any nomenclature you have, but that document should be attached showing that you have an enabling legal document that establishes you as a CSO. We want to have your certified list of current board and executive committee, and again, attach a document including their nationalities and permanent addresses. Also, for us to determine your thematic area focus, attach your latest publication and report that will help us determine whether you have the qualification in the thematic areas you have picked. Information on funding sources. Again, this is your financial statement, and it should be certified from a lawful authority in a country where you are registered. And we want to know that, we want to know each and every, because you've already told us previously the sources that you have received money from. And here you've attached a document proving that those sources are valid and accurate. The last 2 is to do with audit statement. This is basically to determine your financial health and governance health. You have to attach an audit statement of 1 year. In this case, if you have an audit report for the year 2025 or 2024, those are valid statement report. You can attach those one. Any audit report before that, we cannot accept. It should be those valid for 2024 and 2025. And the last requirement is that you have to attach the full contact details of the company or the licensed individual who has conducted the audit report. So in a nutshell, this is the application process. Maybe before I stop my presentation, I want to provide 2 or 3, strong advice. Number 1, as much as possible, give us an accurate information to the best of your knowledge, because for every information you give us, we also do our background check. Number 2, your document should be certified and should be valid. And that will make your application much, much better and very, very strong, right? If we know that you have submitted a document that is not certified or that is not valid, we will disqualify your application. And lastly, we want the information in your document to be accurate and easy to understand, because based on the information you give us, we make determination as to the viability of your application. So we've seen some applications where we cannot even determine the information provided in that document. We've been doing this thing for the last 20 years, and we are saying this not to brag or anything else, but to tell you that we have the experience. When we receive an accurate information, a valid information, we will know. If we have any doubt, we engage a country where you are registered to. If you are in the US, we engage the US government or other authorities in that country. The same applies for whether you are registered in Europe or in US, anywhere. We engage them to ascertain the validity of your document. But please, whatever you put in your document, it should be accurate and clear to understand for us to make a proper determination of your information. With that, allow me to finish my presentation. Thank you, and over to you, Madam Darbo.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bekele. That was incredibly thorough. And I think a lot of people got a lot of clarity on what they need to do next. And speaking of that, this is a perfect time to move to the Q&A. So we're asking all participants to drop your questions into the Q&A box, and we'll go through as many as we can. And no question is too small. So if you're unsure about something, chances are that someone else on this call is also unsure about the same thing. All right, so let's get into answer some of these questions. So there's a question about the audit requirements. A participant is unsure about the 2-year requirement that you mentioned. I think you said an audit has to be done 2 years before the application date. Yes, so that's what they want clarity on. So we'll send that question over to Mr. Bekele.
Thank you so much. I think that is the requirement in the eligibility criteria. We're looking at the latest audit statement that you have, right? And as per the requirement, it should be 2 years or later. So for this cycle of application, we've determined that 2 years to mean 2 fiscal years prior to this application, which is the fiscal year 2025 and 2024. Those are a very clear, requirement. And for those of you who have not done your audit statement, I think you still have time to do that one. You are not a very big organization. You are a CSO. The requirement is very clear. If you don't have an audit statement that is later than 2 years, recent than 2 years, it means we cannot accept your statement, and that will invalidate your application. So it should be an audit statement in the last 2 years, and for this cycle is 2025 and 2026.
All right, I hope that point is clear. There is a question about when an NGO first registers and then they change their registration to a different category. They're wondering which establishment date should be closed in that case, the original categorization or the change in registration.
Thank you for that. We know from experience that some registration are time bound, right? So whenever you are renewing a registration, the best advice I can give is that share with us your old registration as well. I think merge all your certificate so that we know that you have been in existence for the last 3-4 years. We've seen from the current cycle of application that a CSO whose registration is issued in, say, 2025. But that is because in that jurisdiction, you will have to renew your registration every 5 years, every 4 years, depending on the law of the country. So in this case, my advice would be to submit all your previous registration together with the current one. That will give us the right information to determine your operation for the last at least 3 years per the requirement.
All right, so there's a question here about the 50% funding source. They want clarity on where 50% funding source should come from. But so there's a question here as well on the funding source. Where should the 50% of funding come from? Does it come from other organizations or does it come from government organizations? What is that requirement about?
Thank you for that. That requirement is from any source at the national level, right? If you are based somewhere in the world, say for example, Moldova, so any stakeholder can support you, right? It could be government, it could be private sector, it could be a philanthropic organization. As long as those funders, their objectives, their visions and values align with the AU, you are allowed to factor in your 50% requirement. So any source at the national level, government, private sector, other voluntary contribution is allowed, so long as the objectives and principle of this organization aligns with that of the union.
All right. Someone is saying that their treasurer is a certified accountant, and if they have an audit report provided by their treasurer submitted to tax services in Europe and Africa, do they still need an external auditor?
Thank you so much. I think the whole purpose of an independent audit firm is, I think, straightforward for me, and perhaps let me expound on it a little bit. We want to have an independent opinion of your financial health. So your staff, anyone in your organization, is an internal financial audit, right? But in this case, we want to listen to an independent finance audit voice outside of your organization. So it will have to be a company or a licensed individual that is independent of your organization. If you have an audit within your organization, and then you have done that certification, that report can come in as your own financial statement, not as an audit statement. I think that one is very clear. The intention is to have an independent audit report, independent of your organization.
Okay, it looks like we may need to go back to the basics, but it's quite important actually. There's a participant asking for an explanation on African diaspora recognition. What does that term include? Yeah, the African diaspora, who are included in the African diaspora, just for clarification.
Thank you so much. As I mentioned to you, ECOSOCC is a CSO-based organ of the African Union. We bring in CSOs into our system and into AU system as well. So the first requirement is that, like, whether you are a diaspora organization or an African organization, the first determination is that you should be a civil society organization and designated as such in that country, whether it's in Ghana, in Brazil, or in Spain. The law of the country should designate you as a CSO entity, as non-profit organization, right? In the case of, for example, an US. So for us, it's very, very clear. As long as in your certificate of registration, you are established and you are registered as a CSO organization, and then you are treated as such. So everything depends on whether you are a CSO or not. So any CSO in any shape or form can apply to ECOSOCC, but the governing law is that the law of that country where you are operating, right? And then based on the document you are sharing with us, if you are designated as such, then you are a CSO. So the bottom line is that you should be a CSO registered as such in a given country, whether in Africa or in diaspora.
Okay, all right, I hope that is clear. So the next question we have is, how does ECOSOCC determine who is an authorized representative of an African diaspora CSO?
We don't determine. You should give us someone who is part of your organization. It could be the head of that organization. It could be the deputy, anyone that has close relationship, and preferably employment relationship. Either you are the director of that organization, you are the deputy director, a policy officer, it doesn't matter. You have the freedom to determine who should represent you in ECOSOCC if you are elected into the GA. But the catch is what I mentioned. Your thematic focus and then the experience and qualification of the person you're designating should align. Because a CSO cannot act by itself. It's an individual who represents the CSO. So if you joined us as a ECOSOC member, that individual is here with us to provide input, to share his opinion, his expertise, representing you in ECOSOC. So you should give us someone who has thematic alignment with the thematic focus of the organization. So you have the freedom to choose anyone you want, as long as that person has some kind of relationship and preferably employment relationship with the organization.
All right, I see there is a continental-based CSO on the call who's asking if the criteria for Diaspora CSOs is the same. They missed the webinar yesterday.
The criteria, especially the eligibility criteria, is largely the same. Whatever I've mentioned today applies to a continental CSO as well. The only difference is that if you are a continental CSO, you have to show proof of operation in 2 regions of AU. In AU, we have 5 regions continentally. We have Southern region, Northern region, Eastern, Western, and Central. So if you are vying for continental membership, you should show that you are operating, for example, in Eastern and Southern Africa. And for that, the proof is that you have been registered in these 2 regions. For example, you have a registration in Kenya and in Zimbabwe. That makes you a continental CSO. But assume that you have registration only in East Africa, but in 2 countries of East Africa. For example, say Ethiopia and South Sudan. In that case, you are allowed to apply for a regional membership, right? Other than that, other requirements remain the same, whether you are a diaspora or an African-based CSO.
All right, we have a question about funding again. So they're asking if your CSO depends on small donations to run their activities, how should such organizations provide audit reports?
I think this question has been keep coming for over the last many years. You have received a donation. As an organization, no matter how small you are, you keep a book of account, right? So, and that document you have, no matter how small it is, whether you are led on donation or not, donation in a bigger form, it becomes a grant. You receive also donation from development partners, from UN, from other foundations. Those donations, you need to have a proper financial governance in your organization. If you don't have a proper financial governance, if us as a union, we find it very difficult to accommodate you, because you should have a proper system that you manage your finance, and an audit company should be able to audit your donation you have received in the last 2 fiscal years, right? So the requirement, whether you're small or big, it doesn't change. You have to submit your financial report to an audit company to assess your audit, your financial statement, and generate an opinion based on their assessment. And we want to have the report of that audit evaluation. So the size of your organization doesn't change the requirement of audit statement.
All right, I see one last question on here. Does national sources include government sources too?
When I showed you the system, even on funding details, there is also says funding from government, right? That government can be a government where you are operating at. If you are based in Brazil, of course, if the government of Brazil has given you a grant, right, that should count towards your national sources. So definitely, as long as that government is a government where you are currently operating at, it should count towards that local source we're referring to.
All right, so we're done with this portion, with this segment. And as we wrap up, we want to hear a few thoughts from Mr. Bekele. But if you have any questions in the interim, kindly email support@ecosoc.au.int, and stay tuned to our website and our socials for any update regarding the PGA application. All right, Mr. Bekele. So what we'll do is we will take note of any questions that you have rolling in as well and answer your questions either through our socials, or we'll send you an email answering your questions comprehensively. So feel free to leave your contact details as well in the chat box, and we'll get to those later. All right, so Mr. Bekele, would you mind closing us out with a quick recap of key things people should remember and any important dates coming up?
Thank you, Madam Darbo, and thank you for moderating the session. Perhaps let me start by apologizing for not opening up the audio section. The reason being is that if it wouldn't be a very good session for us. If you have any question, you can always, put it in the Q&A section, and we should be able to answer those questions. And second, we have a dedicated supported email address. One of my colleagues was beaming that. You can send us that question at any time, and we are on it. We'll respond to you instantly. With that in mind, perhaps to leave you with two important, advice. And number one is that most of our assessment is based on the document you are submitting. So you'll have to submit the right document. I want to reiterate on that. Submit a right document that is certified, that is valid, and the information in the document is accurate and is very clear, right? That is very, very important to us. And that kind of submission is considered as a strong application. And second, we have a dedicated team currently working around the clock when it comes to G application. So if you have any question, any point of clarification, do not hesitate to reach out to us using our support email address. We'll get back to you in less than a day at times. Unless we're receiving so much question, it might take time. But so far, I think we are responding to everyone's question using that email address. We are ready to support you for you to have a very good application. And the deadline for the application is 15 July. You still have 1 month to go. You still have enough time to collect and consolidate all your supporting documents and then submit a very good application. And I would sincerely wish you, all the best in your application process. And it will be a very important exercise for us, specifically for the diaspora constituency. For the very first time in our history, for the 5th GA, we are bringing a diaspora members into our General Assembly. And I really imagine in the coming 5th GA, a Diaspora CSO providing, its opinion, its voice, representing millions of African diaspora living outside of the continent. So I'm really looking forward to that exercise. And I really want you to go and apply. And I think as long as you submitted the right information, as I mentioned to you, we will evaluate your application effectively. And once, as I mentioned to you, the credential committee certified your application, and then we go through an election process. So elections happens per region. As I mentioned to you, for the diaspora, we have an election for the Americas as one global region, and then for Europe as one region, Asia, Oceania, and then the other region. An election will happen among those CSOs who are certified and cleared by the credentials committees. The election will be conducted based on the ECOSOCC election guideline approved by the ECOSOCC General Assembly. And with that, allow me to say thank you once again and conclude this webinar. Thank you. Over to you, Madam Darbo.
Hi. Thank you so much, Mr. Bekele. I see one last question here asking us to post the videos from this webinar on socials. We'll do that. We'll post it on our YouTube channel as well. So you can stay tuned on that. We want to thank you so much for spending your morning, your afternoon, or your evening with us. And we're really grateful for your interest and your time. We hope that today has given you the clarity and confidence to move forward with your 5th PGA application. And on behalf of everyone here at ECOSOCC, take care, and we look forward to staying connected. All right, goodbye for now.
Oh, that's it. Thank you so much.